Yeah, yeah, the Karens need not to be masked. What? Okay, Clarice, we're streaming also, so you need to watch the chat on that.
So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people online, is that correct? Plus you said 7 counting you. Oh wait, I have a dog issue, so he starts to. All right, I lied to you. In the event of a fire, we can use that door. So we will talk. Okay?
What's that?
So we need to talk about that door and everything. Okay? So they want us to have that with the barriers and 2 main fire exits. Okay?
Yeah, we'll talk.
Yep. All right.
Boy, you're in trouble with the truck not opening up?
What?
Yeah.
She's talking to somebody else.
Okay.
Just so you know, Brad, on Sunday, Clarice was louder compared to everybody else on Zoom.
I can't do, I just have to stay.
I know, but she can, which is why I was telling her.
I don't think she can. I have to
And
stay
I
on
have
top of the,
Dave Ringel on.
I have to stay on top of the feed.
Darius,
Yes?
Lucy cannot hear either the Karens and the
Right, we haven't turned them up yet.
Okay.
They're not talking yet, they're just getting people in order and whatever.
There you go.
So we are still getting ready to go. If you're online, give us a minute. We have not actually started the meeting yet. So that's why you probably haven't heard people running around. We're trying to get people in house, but we didn't want to leave everyone hanging. So just give us a minute.
No, this lectern is bare. No. Oh, here. Here you go. And we have Mr. Mosley here. No, they are in the library now.
Oh, okay, that's convenient.
Yes.
I don't have to go down, I can go up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have some socks for me? You said you had some socks.
So for
me?
those on Zoom and on YouTube, we're going to take a few more minutes to
excellent.
try to get people in-house that showed up
Out,
and give people a few minutes to connect. So I apologize, we do want to start on time, but give us another 3 or 4 minutes to get settled in.
keep them on.
Excellent.
So, yeah. It's a good thing, I guess, but I need to give them up because they're almost here.
Yeah.
They're double fronts, 2 of them are double fronts.
Oh, those will.
Okay, I think
those
we need
will
to
be
get going,
greatly
guys.
Okay.
Because people made an effort to get here on time tonight.
Okay.
My mic's on?
Yes, both your mics are on.
Yes. I want to welcome everybody here tonight, both in the visual world as well as those that came here. We are using these meetings for information, answer questions, field concerns with regards to Resurrection Lutheran Church operating the cold weather shelter from November 15th to April 15th for this year. Currently, we are in the process where we have to go through the Planning Commission to receive a conditional use permit. And that is going to be on Tuesday night, November 9th at 7 o'clock. So there will be additional time if individuals would like to use that time to discuss that. So with that, I have a number of people online, and then I have some individuals who have come in here to the sanctuary. And I want to make sure that I address everybody and I don't forget them. But first, what I would like to do is I would like to introduce Scott Shambor.
Can I just suggest you introduce us first?
Oh, I will, yes, you're right. I'll introduce myself. I'm looking at the people that have called in, I'm like, I think I know everybody. My name is Karen Laufer, and I am the president of the congregation here at Resurrection Lutheran. We also have Pastor Karen Perkins, who is our presiding pastor. We have Brad Perkins, who is taking on this role kind of as project manager to get this project rolling, should it happen. We also have Jared Campbell, who is our director. He handles all the technical things, as well as Clarice Beathers. I won't tell you where she's at, but she's up on the screen because we miss her that she's not in Juneau. And Adam Garner.
And she handles live chat.
She handles all the live chat. And Adam Garner, who is running the camera. So that
Corbin
is,
Perkins, the church dog.
and yes, and then we have Corbin, the church dog. So I think I would like to start with Scott Shambor to talk about the history of the cold warming shelter and the process and why we are here at Resurrection and the information at this informational meeting. Okay, Scott?
Sure. Great, so I'll go ahead and get started, and thanks everybody for having me tonight. Allison Eddins is also the Community Development Department's planner for this project, and we'll have a lot of the details on the additional use process if you have it, and I'll have some background on the program and the contract. So basically, the cold weather shelter started out of the 2017 Mayor's Task Force on homelessness. It was a recommendation to help with overflow options for the winter and to make sure that folks did not die on the street due to inclement weather. This is going to be going into the fifth winter of this project, or fifth winter. And so the first, after 2017, it's had different variations of the program. First, the city had got a grant to rent the public safety building downtown and contracted with Glory Hall and Aware to provide services from November 15th to April 15th. In the second year, the city actually owned the building and contracted with a combination of Glory Hall and St. Vincent Hall that year. The public safety building, as purchased by the city, was slated to be demoed, and so going into that next year, we knew that there wasn't really great space that we knew of, and there was interest from multiple home service providers to potentially host the program. And so at that point, we put it out to a contract, and at that point, St. Vincent's won the contract that year to operate it out of its Teal Street community room out in the valley. So that lasted for almost the duration of the first winter, and then March
I have a question from Miguel. And I'm going to give you a microphone, Miguel.
Make sure it's on.
All right, is that microphone's on?
It is.
Scott, this is a broader question than this meeting, but why is this done? Why has the city chosen to do this through contracts versus providing the service itself with like city staff and that sort of? Just as kind of a programmatic, broader question. Why does the city choose to contract versus do the work itself?
Sure. Historically, social services, homeless services have been through nonprofit providers. So historically, that's been the case. The city has stepped in and provided seasonal kind of assistance based on assembly policy. But at this point, we don't have a social services department, and it's kind of preferred to work with providers who are kind of more skilled and trained in this area to provide the service.
Should we have the other Zoom folk online introduce themselves if they want? Or,
Well, I was going to go to Allison,
sorry.
which is our next official, for lack of a better term. Allison with Community Development. If you could explain the conditional use process that we have been going through.
Yes, thank you, Pastor Karen. So, yeah, my name's Alice Mittens. I'm the planner who's been assigned the analysis of the cold weather emergency shelter. So, the zoning district plays a big part in this analysis. A cold weather emergency shelter is considered an assisted living facility, and those type of facilities require a public process to go before the planning commission to be approved and perhaps conditioned in order for the facility to be able to open. So what I do is I look at the applicant's application, and then we send out abutters notices to residents within 500 feet of the facility. And we go beyond 500 feet, but that's just minimum code requirements. But on those abutters notices, folks get my contact information. They can provide their written comment to me, and then I will analyze the application based on code requirements, but also on some of the concerns that have been expressed by residents, and then recommend that the planning commission approve certain conditions that can help mitigate any concerns that the public may have. So far, we've gotten quite a few public comments, and only one comment that we've received so far has expressed concern over potential crimes of opportunity and the lack of police presence in the neighborhood, so to speak. But for the most part, all the public comment has been in support. But of course, I will analyze that public concern that has come in and then make recommendations to the planning commission to help mitigate some of those concerns. That will happen on November the 9th, so the public can continue to email me their comments, and I will put them in my staff report up until this Friday. And then the public can continue to send in comments. I won't have time to analyze them, but they will be printed and put into the planning commission's packet if the public gives us comments in writing before the Friday before the meeting. So the meeting is November 9th. If the public can get those comments in by the Friday before at noon, those comments will be in the packet. If you don't have time to comment before then, or you need some time to get your thoughts together, that's okay. You can also attend the planning commission meeting. Those are done via Zoom, and that link was sent out in the abutters notice that people got in their mailbox. Log in, join the Zoom meeting, and you will be able to testify virtually in person to the Planning Commission, and they will consider your comments at that time. They can accept my recommended conditions as written, or they can amend them if they see fit, or they can add new conditions based on public testimony that's received that evening that they hadn't previously got. So that meeting will take place November the 9th at 7 p.m. These meetings, depending on how long, I guess just to say, depending on how many people would like to testify, if there is a large number, the Planning Commission typically limits public testimony to about 2 to 3 minutes per person. Staff will present the proposed project, which is this emergency shelter. Then the applicant will have time after I present to address any questions or concerns from the Planning Commission. And then the Planning Commission will open it up to public testimony. And that there is no limit on the time that we take for public testimony, but each person would be limited to about 2 to 3 minutes if there's more than, say, 20, 25 people that want to testify. And then the Planning Commission will be able to ask the public questions based on their public testimony if they see fit. And then the applicant will be able to answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have that were brought up during public testimony. And then after that, the Planning Commission will make their public deliberations, and they will make a decision right then and there that night on whether to approve the project or not, and then assign certain conditions.
So with regards to the packet, when do those hit the website?
Yeah, so the packet is made available a week prior to the date of the hearing.
Okay, so
So those of you, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, so comments and things that are received at that Friday, an individual may not have seen those comments until Tuesday. Is that correct?
So comments can come in writing up until this Friday at noon.
Oh, this Friday, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this Friday at noon. And then on November the 2nd, the packet will be made available to the public via CBJ's website.
Okay.
And then if the public still hasn't had time to get in their written comments, but they want to, they have until November the 5th at noon to email any written comments. And the email address was provided on your postcard that you received in the mail. It's permits@juno.org. And then if you still haven't had time, but you would like to testify at the meeting, then you can just attend the meeting on November the 9th at 7 p.m. and give public testimony at that time.
Okay, so written comments to you by this Friday
To be included in the packet.
to be put in the packet, and they will be available on the 2nd.
That's right.
Okay. So we also have online, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Dave, because I know you are out of town, but we do have Dave Ringel online, who was the manager of the cold weather warming shelter
Emergency shelter.
through St. Vincent de Paul. Dave, do you have any comments you would like to make?
Okay, I am out of town, but one of the things I'm looking at is we see a need for the cold weather shelter. While we worked with the JAC and with the city for 15 months, the difficulty was finding a place. And in the packet, it mentioned that Resurrection Lutheran is significantly bigger than the community room at St. Vincent's, which I think is part. The other thing that we looked at was looking at having something downtown, because the majority of the people not being served right now will be downtown. Now, the question is, how many people will be left? And there's a lot of unknowns in this. Our shelter capacity has greatly increased. There was a good job tracking data, and we know of the whereabouts of about 100 of the 140 who used the shelter over the last 2 months that we tracked. And some people come in for a short period of time and then leave for other places. So, while St. Vincent's will be working with Resurrection Lutheran as far as providing any staff, we will provide names if they need staff, but we'll also be using the supplies and sharing some of our experience with Resurrection Lutheran, although it will be their contract and their responsibility. But what we see as a need, at least until the effects of the last couple of years on the homeless are countered with improved services, we do see a need for the cold weather shelter.
Brad had a hand up.
Thank you, Dave.
So, Dave,
And now I'll introduce Brad Perkins, who is the project manager for Resurrection Lutheran Church.
I just wanted to thank Dave for his help, and also to apologize if Dave felt that there was any suggestion that the facility here was better than the facility at St. Vincent de Paul, because I think all I said was it was a little bigger, because the facility, I think we're 2,000 square feet, and the one at St. Vincent, which was the facility I helped get ready for the shelter there, is 1495. So, but Dave has been a great help, and he's going to help us with equipment and other things, and we are looking to his support for this. And I also today spent over a half hour on the phone with Jackie Bryant, who's been running the shelter for the last, when it was over at the Jack, and finished up after I left St. Vincent. And I think she's going to be on board helping us to the degree she can remotely with staff and helping getting things in the computer and all that. So we're looking forward to that partnership and getting going here as we have to ramp up quickly, assuming that we do get the conditional use permit. And so it's going to be challenging to do that. But thanks again for Dave's support, and if we do end up taking this on.
Yes, and I want to thank Dave Ringel as well. St. Vincent de Paul took on a yeoman's job. I mean, when COVID hit Juneau, it was kind of like day to day, try to figure it out and make it work. And so thank you for all of your hard work, Dave, you and your St. Vincent de Paul staff. As well as Scott. I know, Scott, you spent a lot of time working on it too. So with that, I have a few people in the audience here, and I also have people online, and I would like to go to the people online just because I've got my technical person is still up and running and working well, and GCI is still running the internet, so we'll work on that. So I have Dan and Lorinda Kasner. And I don't know, I saw Dan, and then I saw Lorinda, and then I saw Dan. You can just...
I'm just listening at this point. I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And then I have Tom Sullivan, and I apologize if I don't pronounce your last name right, Lisa Lope, with First National Bank, Alaska.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Same thing. We're here to listen. We don't have comments at this point.
Okay. And it's nice to hear a voice from the past, Tom.
Nice catch.
Good old JYFL. And then I also have an individual that, Jetta And I don't know who else is with you, Jetta.
This is Jenna Whitaker and my spouse, Rob Steele, who
Oh.
live up the street from Resurrection Church. I did send in my very supportive comments earlier this week, but I feel that they were a little disingenuous because I said boldly that I believed Pastor Perkins would communicate with the Flats families who are adjacent neighbors, and we only found out about this meeting because Rob visited the Resurrection Lutheran website to get some statistics for his letter, and he happened to notice there was a meeting tonight. I did do a little additional research and saw that the meeting was publicly noticed in the Empire article and in the KTOO newsletter, radio story, but I am surprised you don't know and aren't an active participant in the Flats Families Facebook page, because that's where most of the action and the concerns are expressed. We've had a huge discussion about whether to have trick-or-treating this year, and the Cold Weather Shelter has made the round several times with lots of input, and if you don't know about that, too bad, but I encourage you to become a member of the Flats Families Facebook page to stay in touch with your neighbors, and this meeting would have been perfectly a perfect opportunity to invite your neighbors, but I don't see any neighbors from the Flats other than us who happen to find out about it kind of on the aside. Miguel is here, he's a very close neighbor, that's great, but there were several people in opposition to this plan. I don't know if they're going to submit others because they're maybe not so versed on the details that Allison provided, but I encourage you to put the word out and communicate with your close neighbors.
So, is the Facebook page Flats Family?
It's Facebook page.
Okay, and so we can join that.
I assume you can. It is a moderated group. Milani Shine is the moderator, and she will add you, and you can get the dialogue going.
Thank you.
Yeah, but please accept our
Yes.
apologies for that. We, as you might have guessed, we were not aware of that. Also, the church, it's no excuse, but we're not very versed in Facebook. We're mostly, we're web-based mostly, but we need to be better at Facebook, and so we will certainly join immediately. Karen Loffer, though, and it probably obviously didn't reach yours, did take out notification cards on rubber bands and did in a like a 2-block area around the church, put notices on doors, because that's the only other thing we could think of for doing that. But obviously it was not effective. So I, again, accept our apologies. We will get on that Facebook page. If you all think that it would be helpful for us to do another meeting with the Flats group before in the next, in the next week or so, we would be happy to do another informational meeting. We've been holding informational meetings with users of the church and other groups, and we'd be happy to do one for the Flats.
Yes.
That may be a good idea if you can throw it together before the 5th.
Hey.
Oh, okay, Karen, can you get him out of here so we can talk? I'm sorry, it's not your fault.
No, it's not.
Yeah, yes, we can easily do that. We're very versed and quick about throwing together informational meetings. So we will get something to the Facebook page, and we will offer up a meeting in this next week with this group. If you would like us to do that, it's not a problem to do that.
Tonight, we're just
I
doing a
can't
public
promise it's
meeting
going to be well attended, but it's just another good
for commentary on the,
And we're
You're not a Facebook supporter, but I just want to tell you
the warming shelter.
yeah, and so that'd be great. And like I said, we're
I'm assuming
unfortunately I wish
no,
we were
in fact,
better at
no, you're
Facebook
not.
than we are, but Clarice is, and so she'll get us on there, and we'll offer up a meeting. We'll offer up and see what time you guys want one, and we are quick about getting meetings here. One thing we are good at is doing these multimedia hybrid meetings, and so we'll, if you guys want one, we'll be happy to do it. Okay?
Yes. And, the church has been here for quite a while. And, sometimes when we get into our own little circles, Jetta, it seems like well, doesn't everybody know this? But no, they don't. And, you know, if you're not a part of all of that. So yes, we will definitely reach out to more people in the flats. And are you going to notify them as to when they could submit public comments if they chose to? So
Well,
they
they
have
can-
until Friday to the planning commission.
Well, hopefully you can post, hopefully you can post something to the family's Facebook page that goes over the
Oh.
deadlines and the dates.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
All right.
Perhaps a copy of the card that was sent out by the planning
Yes.
commission.
Yes.
I guess we live outside of the 2 block circles, so we didn't get a card.
Yeah.
Didn't get one of our cards, but, yeah, we'll add this information onto our pages.
Yeah.
That Allison gave us also.
Now, I can't quite see, but do I have an individual Lisa online?
Clarice? Here, let me change the name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I also work across the street and work for First National, and I'm just interested to hear, what the plan is for the neighborhood flat and for our work community, location. Thanks very much, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And then I have Becca. Is that the Becca that I know?
Yeah, hi, it's me, next door. Dale's there, I'm just listening.
Okay, Becca. How's that baby?
Oh, good, she's fussy, so I'm home with her trying to get her home soon.
Okay. So have I missed anyone online? Okay. And then I have an individual from a news outlet, and I have not met her. And
I'm Lindsay, I did the article.
Lindsay, hi. I haven't met you. I just came back into town. And do we have any questions from individuals in the sanctuary? For those of you who have been homebound and not getting out as much as we would like to, which is almost all of us, when this all happened with regards to COVID, I'm going to be the first to admit I said, well, Resurrection's got to lock its doors and shut down. We can't. And luckily, this church came together and we were able to maintain the food pantry that operates on Monday afternoons from noon to 4:30 and feeds about 150 people every week. We've been able to have a hybrid of church service as well, both online and in the sanctuary with distancing. We were able to help with the Alaska Folk Festival and do recording for them. If you haven't been in the church lately, it doesn't look like what it used to with regards to all the other groups. We have technology now that we can really work with recording with, like I said, we did the Alaska Folk Festival. We did a lot of recording for that. We also have a whole gamut of programs that are available online. You can just go to junolive.org and you can see all the different programs that we have been doing. On Saturdays, we've started a whole series of programs, and the nice thing about it is you can watch them live because we do them live, but we also have a YouTube station. And we've added a program about pets. We've added, yes.
Not yet, the pets program.
Well, I'm sorry. We will have a program on pets. We have a program, Juno Sleeps, that talks about housing issues. Juno Eats, which talks about getting food, preparing food. We've had a lot of positive feedback and input from the Cooperative Extension and the Food Bank to talk about getting food in this town, food security, and then also food preparation. We have been having a group of individuals come in and they perform, and it goes right out to Wildflower Court, and they'll be coming back. So we've been able to provide services throughout this whole pandemic, and it's still going on, and we've been able to maintain a safe environment. We've not had any positives, we haven't had breakouts, and we've never really locked the doors, which I think is an excellent testament as to the fortitude of we at Resurrection Lutheran, we as a community location downtown here, and we as a member of the neighborhood. So we want to make sure that we help all our neighbors, and that includes those who are marginalized. And we want to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable throughout this whole process. So I want to thank everybody who attended, and I don't see any hands up.
Before you sign off,
Yes.
I just would like to enumerate some of the mitigation plans that we have in place, just so that if they address anyone's concerns, maybe we can talk about that now rather than wait until, after somebody has written a letter. We do, first of all, the hours for the shelter are 11 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. on nights that are expected to be below 32 degrees based on the NOAA prediction at 6 p.m. the night before, some very specific description of the weather at a minimum. That's the minimum that we have to be open. The shelter, we anticipate having lights and cameras around the church. We already have a number of cameras inside the facility and doorbells with cameras on them. We will have at minimum 2 staff on at all times, and I believe in a very well-trained staff. So we train in customer service, in dealing with sort of basic de-escalation, in food handling, and I think there are 2 other trainings that we do. CPR and what was the other? Narcan. And so we do expect to have staff well trained, and also in my experience, having a highly engaged staff that is awake and working the whole time, it prevents most problems from ever occurring. It's not a sleeping shift for the staff. The staff are there to help make sure that it's a safe and quiet environment for the patrons to sleep. So we do that training. Then we will also have cleaning, contract cleaning to be done to make sure that the indoor space is sanitized, but also that the area around the church that there's no debris or litter left around the church so that it doesn't accumulate that way. In the past, the JPD would come and help the patrons up and out each morning, so we are going to be asking them to do that, as well as driving by periodically to prevent any chance that people will be loitering. There's a bus stop immediately outside the doors, so we know that people will have access to transportation, and we will likely have bus tokens available for those without passes so that people can get on the bus to go wherever it is that they're heading next and be out of the neighborhood before most people are getting up and out, and certainly before even the students that use space at the church for tutoring are preparing or even thinking about coming in. So those are some of our mitigation plans to hopefully reduce and prevent any negative impact on our neighbors and on the neighborhood.
Thank you.
If I may, Karen, Reverend Karen?
Yes.
Yes.
The bare minimum hours are 11 to 6:30. Are you able to extend that to allow people to enter sooner, because they're just going to be milling around the neighborhood until 11?
So when I've run programs like this in the past, I do let them in early, as long as I have staff or myself am present to let people in, both so that they're not going around the neighborhood, but also so they're not getting cold. Standing outside the door being cold isn't good for anybody, so I will let people in, and my experience is also that with the right relationships with patrons, they then help set up and make the program work more smoothly. We won't extend on the other end. So while it closes at 6:30, everybody is out, the building's closed except to the cleaning people by 7 o'clock. And we're not going to extend on the other end.
Thank you.
All right.
Question is for Scott.
Okay.
So in the past, have there been earlier openings, and is that 11 o'clock a contractual requirement, and how is that established?
Yeah, so the contractual arrangement is at a minimum up to from 11 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. So it gives flexibility to the operator to determine what is best for the clients of the program. We did, when we moved the Cold Weather Shelter moved from Teal Street to the Juneau Arts and Culture Center, we did amend that contract with St. Vincent de Paul to open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. just because we knew we were in it for the long haul and needed to provide additional services to keep people safe from COVID. So this contract terms is back to the minimum of 11 p.m. To 6:30 a.m. But obviously, as Pastor Karen and Bradley understand the needs of the clients, it's kind of there's some discussion for them to.
And then, when I was opening earlier, past contracts, were there contract amendments that address the financial impact on the contractor of having these hours?
So there was a contractual amendment when the move was made from the Teal Street to the Juneau Arts and Culture Center, because we also added funding for additional staff, so there was 4 staff, since it was a bigger facility, and for the extended hours. So right now, it is a $25,000 a month fee that can be invoiced for the service for the month. But during that period when it was at the Juneau Arts and Culture Center, it was bumped up to $36,000 a month. So it's back at its original terms.
Right, and I'm asking these questions because I share Jenna's concern that people are going to be waiting in the cold for the shelter to open at 11, which I think is pretty late. But then I'm an old guy, go to bed early.
So this is Brad. So let me address that. When I ran the shelter with Jackie and Pastor Karen, when it was over in the public safety building, and when we moved it to Teal Street, that was especially when it was over at Teal Street, that was 2 years ago. That was a bitterly cold winter. That was when when we were below zero for many days. We definitely opened early, and we did not. It's a fixed price contract. It didn't really affect our operating costs, and so we didn't ask for extra money. I negotiated as a fixed price contract, so we won't need extra money to do that here either. So, and so we do this based on compassion. Same with also the fact is that while the contract says that we must be open when it's going to be below 32, we often will be open other nights for both load leveling for the staff and also for compassion of the people out there. Sometimes it's like, 32, 30, 30, 31, 31, 33, 30, 31, 30, 29. And so sometimes we'll just keep it open for those nights,
Or it's
Christmas
wet and windy.
and windy, or we're very windy downtown, or it's Christmas Eve and it's going to be 35. Well, we're not going to keep people out on Christmas Eve. So things like that. So I've always operated the shelter with compassion, and we will continue to do that here.
Thank you for the response.
Aaron, this is Tom Sullivan. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thanks, Karen. I believe I read somewhere in the materials that as far as notification of potential clients, it said social media, emails, and electronic signage.
Yes.
And so I just wonder, excuse me, and honestly, I do not mean to be snarky or come off the wrong way, but we already, being across the street from you, already have had incidents of vandalism from the homeless that kind of park around the Bill Ray Center and the parking lot across the street. But so one of the questions that I wonder is, okay, when you say social media and emails, again, I want to preface this because it is such a potentially volatile question, and it's something that there's a need in the community. But really, how many smart devices do the people have that you're emailing that, or they're on social media to be able to say the shelter is open? Or will it really be a situation that once it gets cold, every homeless person in the downtown area will just naturally migrate to RLC to see if it's open or not?
I'd like to, let me address that, Brad.
Okay,
So it's a really good question. It's an important question because it occurred to me as well. With regard to the question of smart devices, I would say a very, I don't estimate percentages, but a very high percentage of the people that we serve through the food pantry and people that I have served in shelters have smart devices. That's one of the main tools that is necessary to survive in life. You need a phone number, but also I'm surprised how many people I encounter who do use the internet, who do have email addresses, who do watch YouTube videos, and so higher than I expected before I started asking people. The other piece that I'd like to address is that people who live on the street develop their own community, and news travels really well among the population. And the signs, the electronic signage that that we're talking about are illuminated signs, stationary illuminated signs that are in specific locations that are highly trafficked, and those go on and say shelter open tonight, or shelter not open tonight. And that it has not been my experience that people show up when the shelter isn't open. Okay, Brad.
Okay. If I can follow to that, thank you, Pastor. That's and also for what it's worth, department. My father was a Methodist minister for 43 years in Iowa when I grew up, so I certainly appreciate your mission, vision, and that sort of thing. And, you know, I have to you know, I wear a variety of hats, like a lot of people do. Yet, I don't see, with the homeless people that I see already around our office, you know, I don't see them trying to plug in devices and charge, but I'm not gonna, you know, squabble about whether they have access or what, but I do feel like there's a possibility, a good possibility, that many people will just kind of, you know, wander to the church to be able to see at night. And of course, my concern as vice president of the bank is, you know, 55 feet from your front door is an ATM. 57 feet from your front door is a restaurant where several customers come and drop off bags. It's dark. You know, we're trying to provide service, and you know, I do think that with opening at 11, I do think with 28 beds, which is, you know, I don't know, you can probably speak to this better than I. I've not run a shelter. But at 28 beds, if it drops down, do people start thinking, as the person from the neighborhood association said, I'm sorry that I forgot her name, I better get down there because I want to get a spot. So they open at 11, we better get down there at 9. So we have people that are taking cash out of an ATM all night long in the dark with people that are perhaps, we worry about the safety concern. And I think there's part of it is, you can say that we've asked JPD to do extra patrols. Well, so have we. Mm-hmm. And, you know, pretty much the answer is, we're short of staff. We have to look at each situation and triage it as to where we put our men, women, officers to go. And, you know, I'm concerned, you know, the bank is concerned about the safety of our customers utilizing a night drop and an ATM that spits out cash. I mean, I can't, you know, Lisa's on the phone, I'm not going to ask her, but I know that when I show up, I see people all the time now. You know, fiddling around with an ATM, and when they show up, they just, you know, kind of stalk on. You know, like somehow they're gonna get cash out of it or something. You know, so, you know, those are our concerns, and I think they're real concerns. And I think that, you know, and when you say there'll be increased police presence or security, I'm just wondering. I think it would be great to have somebody from JPD be a part of these conversations and say, what kind of protection will be additional protection will be provided? Because I think that remains a concern. What you're doing is noble, but we just have concerns for our customers and our employee safety, and you know, I think that's, you know, a very important point. And I know in the neighborhood association, you know, you're familiar next door with the new native, I forget what council, what administrative body of the native organization is going into you in the house that's being torn down right next door to Resurrection Lutheran, right? You know, the police have already been called. We've been contacted more than once to say, and that's at this point, do you have any videos that face that way? Because that building is being vandalized, and people are coming in and breaking in and staying in there and doing who knows what in there. You know, those are the things that I think that from the business community, and you know, we faced these same situations to a relative degree when it was proposed that the Bill Ray Center be used as a warming shelter. And so, you know, those are some of the concerns. And the last thing that I'll say, and then I would welcome your comments, because I know for a fact that your hearts are in the right place. They absolutely are.
Okay, I'm going.
They said, just my last thing, when they wrote that, and they said that they were going to take the overflow from the Glory Hall, that what we discovered was that what that actually meant was that those were the people those were the unfortunate individuals who were no longer welcomed at the Glory Hall because they were either high, drunk, or violent. And that was the overflow. So, along with the warming station, is that the situation too? I'm just curious.
Let him finish.
So I agree with you that they are important concerns, they're valid concerns. I am not hearing anything from you that isn't entirely reasonable. So please know that it's not like I'm sitting here thinking anything. That's really valuable input, and it's valuable in planning. I would like to let you know that we have been trying to schedule the sit down with the JPD. We weren't able to get somebody here tonight, but so that we can have them as part of the planning process for this. The regular participation was just based on my experience from when it was on Teal Street and when it was at the Public Safety Building. So that is one of those to be determined what the exact details are of how often they're around. I will also tell you that as a last choice shelter and a very low threshold shelter, we are going to take people who are, for one reason or another, not able to be at one of the other shelters. Now, the times that we would not allow somebody to be here is if they are threaten the safety of themselves, the staff, or anybody in the shelter, or anybody in the neighborhood, in which case we do call the police. And again, this is just based on my previous experience, so I don't know what the plans are now. But on the 2 times that I've had to call, the police have responded very quickly and very helpfully. And then the other chance is that if somebody is either disruptive to the point where they're not letting other people sleep, in which case we try to arrange another option for them, or intoxicated to the point where they need to have medical attention. and then they go to the what's the sleep off center called?
Sobering center.
Sobering center. So that's my expectation in terms of what's going to be involved and how are we going to make sure that we're planning appropriately with the police. We don't currently have a camera on that side of the building. And to tell you the truth, I have not worked at a shelter that was this close, well, in Juneau, that was this close to an ATM. So, you know, that's a new circumstance for me. We just earlier today, we're planning the positioning of the cameras for the alley and for the north side of the building so that we can make sure that all the places that we don't currently have coverage will have coverage, and then figure out what lights are going to be helpful to making sure that we're not having these dark places where people aren't observed, but at the same time aren't annoying the neighbors who are trying to sleep and want to not have the light going off in their window. So we will be adding cameras to have the coverage around the building.
Pastor?
Yeah.
Pastor, that will be very beneficial after the fact. I guess one of the things that I would ask is, can you define for me, or for us rather, when you say that they have been turned away by the other homeless entity offerings, what does that mean? Why have they been turned away? And so this will be, is it the case that it is, as it was with the Bill Ray Center, that it was a situation when they said overflow from the Glory Hall, that it was, for lack of a better term, and forgive me, it was kind of the worst offenders. It was the people that were high on drugs at the time. It was people that were violent. It was people that were drunk. So when you say, yes, you're going to take these people that have been turned away, Pastor, who in your mind, who are those people?
So just to be clear, what I said was people who are not able to participate in one of the other programs. So in some cases, they have been turned away. In some cases, there is either a conflict with, they can't be placed with somebody else at the same place, or they had an issue in the past with the place, or they don't meet the requirements to participate in that place. So it's not exclusively people who have been turned away. We don't, so I just want to say it's not all about being turned away. We don't accept violent people because we can't then assure the safety of the staff, the other patrons, and then anybody else who's around. So we wouldn't accept violent patrons. We do expect that if people are intoxicated, regardless of the substance, as long as they are able to comply with our expectations of being cooperative and quiet, we would allow them to be here because those are the people who are most vulnerable in the freezing weather.
But they are not allowed to use or drink in the shelter.
So yeah, that was the next sentence. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to use or.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that they weren't, but I guess I say, and I honestly don't mean it facetiously, but how do you screen for violence?
Okay, and Dave Ringel would like to carry. He's had his hand raised.
Right, I got it. So I'll let it go. Dave can talk about screening for violence and how that's done.
Okay, Dave Ringel, you have the floor.
Okay, I'd like to talk just a little bit because right now I'm in the Glory House
I'm familiar with their policies. And we've had a lot of discussion about it and some transition. You know, if somebody were to be kicked out of the glory hall, they usually end up sleeping on my front porch of my senior housing, which is probably the most vulnerable people in my house. And we've had, I really think that because of a couple factors at the new glory hall, it has increased capacity. It's got the same number of rooms as the previous glory hall, but it has overflow capacity for up to 20 people. And I sort of was talking to the directors about how to make life for the neighbors easier, and there's a lot more assertive work going into counseling some of the people, partly because with more room and not being downtown, it's allowed for some more counseling, more decompressing, and it's made a significant difference, much more than I expected. There are people.
I think that's an excellent point. And as you just said, it's in the valley, and so, you know, these are the folks that are downtown. But no, go ahead and finish. Those are very good comments that you have.
I think that when you look at why are people staying downtown, I mean, some of them just choose not to go to the glory hall. To be honest, I don't know how many people that's going to be this year. I'd be surprised if 28 beds were needed, many more than the coldest of cold nights. But I think, you know, the people that choose not to go to the glory hall, what I found interesting about several of them is because they're choosing for circumstances not to engage in that lifestyle. The violent people know, and there's ways to work with them. I have to say, you know, and part of this is from having some firsthand knowledge of how the warming shelter worked over the winter, because my son worked there, is that the police were very responsive. When you look at some of the things that happened, when we expanded the hours in April of 2020, there was no place to go. The city was basically in hunker down mode. And one of the reasons we opened things earlier was you had people with no place to go. This is a 1 year opportunity to make sure that the people left downtown are taken care of. I have talked to the service providers about how it would be a great idea to provide more housing, and we have to work on that on the other end. Your concerns are valid, Tom. I worked at a bank, and you know, I look at money differently because of that. And one of the first things I did at my offices was increase the lighting around the building, simply because I have a financial bookkeeper who, at the beginning of the month, is carrying large amounts of cash out to the bank. And you know, we are taking steps to make sure that they're protected, but we also know most of the people in the neighborhood, not all, but most. And I think that can be positive too. So I don't know. I would hope that those fears can be addressed.
Well, I appreciate that, Dave, and I appreciate that, Pastor Prescott, that there's an acknowledgement that the concerns of having a ATM, and if I had to prioritize those in terms of concern, I would say the ATM is of secondary concern, because yes, it spits out up to $500 at a time. But those many merchants that we have downtown that come with their locked bags
including us.
that contain several thousands of dollars of cash. You know, the obvious concern is how long. We all know that, and it's not something that's, Lord knows that it is not something that is specific to the homeless, but rather Juneau or communities in general. Theft of opportunity is rampant. And where there is drug use and that sort of thing, it's, you know, our concerns and you know, just to, I don't, just to put it basically is how long till in the dark when someone's walking over with a bank bag, does someone say to someone else, let's go honk them on the head and grab that and run?
It's important, it's really important, I think, to point out.
That's a real concern to us.
Yes.
We are a bank, and I appreciate, and you both have acknowledged that concern, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. Us, it does, but that is a real concern to us as a bank, the safety of our customers.
So, that's a very important point, but, and Brad, I will let you talk in a moment. One of the things that I do want to share is that statistically, crime does not go up around shelters, and in many cases goes down. That's both property crime and bodily crime. Now, there are a variety of theories as to why that is, one of which is there's more activity, more people paying attention, so you don't have the isolation. But actually, the numbers, this is not specific to Juneau, this is across the country, is that when shelters open up, typically crimes of property and of, what do you call?
Theft.
Yeah. That's property, but also
Opportunity.
Opportunity.
Yeah, typically go down. Brad, go ahead. I know I keep jumping in.
Yeah, I know.
Pastor, could I address that for 1 second? And that is, if again, I don't remember which neighborhood association is represented here, but if Melanie Shivens was on this call, who has been in contact with me and was in contact with us relative to the Bill Ray Center, was that, you know, the food bank that you folks are doing is fantastic. That is a wonderful Christian gesture. And I will tell you that Melanie Shivens, as the president of one of the 4 neighborhood associations in the Flats, has said that once that program began, that most people in the neighborhood had to get beefed up security systems or install a first security system because of vandalism. Now, I hate to put words in Melani's mouth, but this is what she's told me. So, I mean, these are the concerns, and these things happen everywhere, and it doesn't necessarily mean that in the Flats, every theft or every crime that occurs is because of what's going on at RLC. I don't mean to insinuate that whatsoever, but she told me personally that crime in has gone up since the food bank has moved, and the people that they start appearing on Sundays because they want to get there one day ahead of time. So I don't know, perhaps Don or president of one of the flash associations can address that. I know there was 2 representatives. Maybe I'm off topic, but I know that Melania and I have had conversations where she contacted me to relay that, this was concern about the Bill Ray Center. And so, in a way, again, bless you, seriously, and I mean that sincerely, for taking this on. The concern that the Bill Ray Center have now moved 33 feet across the street in the area. Whether it's Alaska Laundry, the grade school, those types of things. So, that's why we're here. I really did not intend to say anything. I just wanted to listen, but I just felt compelled to say some of these things. So is the neighborhood association person there that can comment on any of this?
Well,
or I don't need to put them on the spot.
I was going to say, this is Karen Laufer. I will ask to be included in the Flats family. But secondly, because I'm not quite sure when Melanie noticed an increased need for security, but we've been operating the food pantry for at least 10 years. At least. So that would be, I will reach out to her and see what she has to say. So I will make that,
Maybe it has more to do with the increase of homelessness 10 years ago versus 18 months ago or 2 years ago or whatever. But yeah, I think that'd be a great.
I will personally reach out to her. And then I have Brad Perkins, and then I'm going to go to Miguel, who's been patiently waiting.
Thank you. So, Tom, thank you for all those concerns and comments today. And believe me, I do share them, and I appreciate your input to those things. Working with this homeless shelter, as well as things that Karen and I have done for the last 20, 25 years. On the issue of people arriving early and the like, that is a concern. It's also been a concern even at the food pantry, and so we have changed our policies at the food pantry of how we get food and what we do, so we don't generally have a line anymore. We used to have a line that went almost around the block, and now we generally at the most have some people on the stairs because we have changed how we get food, what kind of food we get, so that people know that we generally have food all the way to closing, so you don't need to get here early, so we don't have people stacked up, because that's not good customer service. It's not good for the neighborhood. As far as the issue of people getting early to the shelter, either because they're afraid we won't have a spot for them, or they're not sure whether we're open or not. We had that issue when we moved over to Teal Street, and we had that issue with the mall. And we were called over to the mall, and so I went over there with Jackie when we opened that facility, and without Jackie, but with my manager, who was my manager Richard, to talk to the mall, because they were concerned because people were hanging around the mall during the afternoon, and that was not okay, and it was not okay with us either that they were doing that. So that was part of the issue of the electronic signage around town. And so the electronic signage was, at that time, a little sign in the window here, which we'll have here. There is a sign downtown in a window at the City Hall, and there'll be a sign out in the valley, as well as a sign in Lemon Creek that lets people know, so they don't need to come down here and check whether we're open.
And the transit center.
And the transit center. So we'll have these electronic signs around for those who don't have a phone or some way to do that. Additionally, when people leave each day, we'll know whether we're going to be open the next day because we have to predict that. So there'll be a sign when they're leaving saying we're open or not. Now I realize if we've been closed a number of days, then they won't be able to know next time we're open. So we try to make sure they do not congregate around the area. And then we worked very hard with JPD to make sure when we were at Teal Street, to make sure they were not hanging around the mall. And we expect to be working to make sure they're not hanging around your bank. That is my biggest concern, not just because of the ATMs and the drop, but they should be hanging around your bank. They shouldn't be hanging around the other businesses around us. We've gone over and talked to COPA. We're going to, of course, talk to the cleaners because there are cleaners. And we're going to make sure they, certainly the construction site we're contacting because that's obviously a place we're worried about, as well as all the neighbors. So we don't want anyone hanging around, when they don't belong here, whether we're open or not, and certainly not getting here early. And that'll be one of the criteria we're going to have to make sure is if you start hanging around early, we're not going to be letting you in. But if people come here and we're full, we're going to find a home for you somewhere else. And if you show up here and you belong somewhere else, because we have lists and we know who you are, if you belong at the Glory Hall or you belong at Housing First or you belong at Aware, we already set up a system with the other shelters that we're going to get you back where you belong. Because this is not the place you come because you went drinking in town and you don't feel like going home. You're going to go back to where you belong. Because we're not housing everyone downtown just because you're down here. So we're going to try to make sure this doesn't happen. Is it going to work perfectly, especially right away? No. But we've done this a lot of years, Karen and I, and we do believe we know how to do it.
The other thing is, when we talk about the cameras, they're not just recording. The cameras will be on a monitor that the staff member will be watching the whole time that they're there. So
both staff members.
Yeah, both staff members. So it will be real time. Yes, it'll be recorded, but it'll also be real time. So they can keep an eye on that. And now I'm going to go to Miguel because he's been very patiently waiting.
Thank you. This is, I agree with Tom that I do appreciate that, the warming shelter exists, and I think it's something that, just in general, it's the idea that anybody doesn't have a place to stay, especially when it's below freezing, is awful. But I have a couple of concerns as a neighbor. We bought the house next door. The emergency exit, right, in the...
Sorry. Shh. That's not okay.
I apologize. The scouts are leaving the building and Corbin is letting us know.
So I guess my thought is, and it's kind of a weird format to air it. I mean, the first we heard about this was through reading it in the news, that this was happening. And I understand that this came up really quickly and you guys are filling a need. But I also recognize that, Tom's concerns are valid, and I think other concerns of folks. I saw a lot on the Flats family Facebook of people saying, anybody who has concerns about this is just kind of a not in my backyard kind of situation. But in my case, it truly is in my backyard because the emergency exit empties into my fenced-in backyard. Because when we bought the house from the church, there weren't any fences built, right? So we assumed we're sharing a yard with a Lutheran church. That's different than buying a house sharing an emergency exit with a emergency use shelter. And even though I'm confident that the vast majority of people who use this shelter are here to sleep and it's cold, and I understand that, homelessness and homeless people, I'd say a majority, a huge population of homeless people are seriously mentally ill and using drugs and alcohol in a really dangerous, harmful way. So my concern is, you know, this is really great, the mitigating steps that you've put in, but I'd like to see it in place. And without knowing, without seeing this even more concrete, like, this seems like wishful thinking to think that while monitoring a group of 28 people and making sure that everybody inside is safe, that, you know, no one is outside loitering in the morning or the afternoon. Loitering isn't illegal. You know, loitering on public property. There's there've been consistently, you know, 2 kind of derelict cars on the street, or, you know, blocking your parking lot, you know, for pretty consistently, right? Or people have all their stuff in the car, and the car is parked there, and is it abandoned? Is it not? It's not necessarily a crime. I'm not going to call the police, but kind of the more that happens, more and more of that seems to come. And I understand, you know, the broken windows theory isn't the kind of, you know, maybe that's been disproven, or maybe there's less, but I think it is a valid concern. And I don't know if with 2 staff and church volunteers and pastors, you guys are going to be able to do everything that you're saying you're going to be able to do to the level that that you intend to. And it's a contract, and but my thought is, if the Glory Hall and St. Vincent de Paul and the City and Borough of Juneau and Bartlett Regional Hospital and either don't want to or can't provide these services, I guess what would be the argument that you guys have of why you're better able to do that? So that's my first question. The second question is, in a labor shortage, which we have right now, it's really difficult for people to hire people. How are you going to, I mean, have you thought about staffing, of how are you going to pay people enough to do this really difficult work? And what if you aren't able to find staff? Do you guys close? If you have 1 staff member, you don't have 2 staff members, somebody calls in sick. I mean, what if you guys run into this situation where you don't have people who want to do this and you guys are understaffed, or you aren't able to find the caliber of people you need to be able to pull this off? You know, what are you going to do? So that's, and then the third question is, you know, if this proves to be something that's really positive, like the food bank or you know, the food pantry and like other things, are you free in this contract to decide that, you know, you want to run a shelter 365 days a year? Are you free to do that? Would there be anything from the city preventing you from doing that? Because if you're able to have it open more than just on really, really cold days, could Resurrection Lutheran make the decision, we want to do this all the time? So, you know, those are my main concerns.
I think they are excellent concerns, and every one of those were the discussion. We had a very long and hard discussion at church council when we found that this needed to be done. No, I can tell you that we are not looking to become a permanent cold weather shelter. That's not what this building was designed for. This is an emergency situation, and because of the timing, a lot of things have been written down and we're all working on it. But until it all is going to involve hiring, paying to do all the mitigation things that we want to do, you know, spending money on it. And until we get the conditional use permit so that we know it's a go, we're not going to be able to spend the money as a church. I mean, that's not a wise use of the church funds. So if, you know, come the 9th.
We'll be posting for the jobs, and we'll be interviewing for the jobs. So it's not like we're going to wait to look for people.
What are you going to pay those positions
So let me, these are all operational questions, guys. Why don't you let me field them, okay?
Okay.
So, Miguel, thank you for asking those questions, and they're good questions. So I think some of the things you're asking for is, you know, do we know the answers to everything? And the answer is no. I'm going to start backward. I'm going to start back at things you asked at the beginning. Why resurrection? And the answer is one, there really isn't another facility in town. And back when the public safety building was torn down, there were really only two places in town it could go. One of them actually was here, because this facility was the right space, the right place, and the right size. The other was over at St. Vincent de Paul. And so that's why it went there. Actually, Jackie, the other person who could operate it, actually wanted me to put it here. And I said, no, I need to use the facility down there because I was running that facility. And then as far as who has experience running it, well, there's really only 3 people in town that are fully experienced. That's Jackie, Bryant, and Brad, and Karen. And so that's the other reason why it's here, is that in town, Jackie has run it since its beginning. When she worked for the Glory Hall, she did it there for a bit, then she ended up at St. Vincent de Paul, and then Karen and I started running it with her there. So we have 3 people in town who are experienced, and so that's kind of why it is here. Those are the people in town that actually know how to run the shelter. And like we said, Karen and I have years of experience doing it before we came to Juneau and doing it also.
Nighttime street ministry was my specialty in San Francisco. So there's a ministry called San Francisco Night Ministry with ministers on the street and counselors on the phone. And that was something that I had been involved with since '97, and kind of work that I was attracted to. So in other congregations, in as much as that's been something the congregation had to deal with, it's been part of what we've encountered and the world we've worked in the emergency that we can't get staffing, or somebody calls in sick or something like that. The truth is that Brad and I could run it. It's not ideal. It's not, I mean, that's certainly not the way we would prefer to do it, but we can keep the place open with the 2 of us.
So, and it's your question about finding staff. I am as worried as you are about that. So we'll have to see what we're going to do. We're going to have to pay a bit of a premium. I don't intend to steal from the other shelters, but it's going to be trial and tribute. But I can't guarantee that. Miguel, and you know very well I can't guarantee that.
Well, he doesn't ask.
We have a long list of names of people that have worked before. We have a good reputation in hiring in this community. I have already many people, when I've moved from place to place, that say, where are you going next, Brad? Karen, where are you? And can I work there? And including people that work for the school program here, people that worked at St. Vincent de Paul, people that worked for me when I was a director for the state. So we're already tapping into those lists, assuming we get the conditional use permit. So we will do that. We also do a good job of training people so they can work other places. Where I've worked at big corporations in Silicon Valley and all over the world, and so I think people like working for us, and so I'm hopeful we'll be able to find people, but we'll have to see how it goes.
And I can tell you, as a member of this congregation for many, many years, this is something that we were compelled to do because of a true need.
Right. So
but it is not a permanent solution for a cold weather warming shelter.
Right.
You have to say that fast, very quickly, because we have other programs that utilize this space, and a good example of that is Family Promise.
Right.
And
so let me just finish though.
Yeah.
Let me finish what I was saying. Secondly, I don't want to do this. I need a real job. And I was actually interviewing for other jobs, and so this isn't what I want to be doing here. And so I'm doing this because it needs to be done. And the church also doesn't want to be in this business. And I'm the vice president of the board of JAMI, who's in a process of looking at merger with the Glory Hall, Aware, Housing First. And that organization, when it finally gets merged, really should take this on. So we're doing this because right now it needs a home. And so there's no long-term desire to keep this going. We're doing it because it needs to be here. So the church does not want to be in this business of doing this, and I don't want to be doing it either. But we just didn't see an alternative, and There doesn't seem to be an alternative to doing this. So we don't want this in your backyard, and I don't want it in my front yard at this church. So I agree with almost everything you said, but Karen and I are very good at doing things. And we do something, we do it right, we get it done, and we'll get it done.
Well, besides the fact that Karen Lawfer is just
Yes.
awesome, but also, you know, the church who called me doesn't want me doing this. So, I mean, it's not that they're against it, it's that there are plenty of other demands in the church. So yeah, this is absolutely a stopgap. It needs to happen.
Did we address the questions? And with regards to the emergency exit, we will work on that.
Well, it's going to be alarmed. There are two other exits out of that room, and that's only a fire exit. And so that is in view of both operators of the thing. No one's going to go out that door. That's not going to raise ruckus in that room and get into your backyard. I'm sorry it ended up in your backyard.
Yeah, and if there is an emergency, there will be a lot more going on than, I mean, that's an emergency when you have people exiting onto the street, emergency vehicles, and that sort of thing. So it's not like people will be using it as an exit or going out that way and an opportunity to hang out. It would be a pass through the driveway. I mean, it still puts it. It's a shared backyard, but it's the nature of the exit is alarmed, cameraed, and only in an emergency where people are being moved to safety.
Unless there's a fire alarm in a homeless shelter, which is possible.
Yeah.
When somebody smokes in the bathroom and then fire alarm happens,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, yeah, 28 folks in my backyard. What do you?
We move them out into the street and eventually to the parking lot here. That's our what do you call it?
Evacuation plan.
Yeah.
But the gate is locked. On the gate out of the backyard is locked.
Currently, it's not, but we can also develop.
Well, no, it is. I mean, I think there's a lock that's on there. I think I have the key. What do you guys do in that circumstance?
Well, I was there, I looked at it yesterday because I was trying to map out if we were to, run a corridor or something so that it goes right out into the street.
Well, let's address that.
But that's, yeah.
Miguel, we'll make sure that doesn't happen. Also, the alarm in the smoke detector in the back, the bathroom does not set off the building alarm.
But I think those are definite concerns, and we will be a good neighbor. We will, because that's what we do. So we want to make sure that everybody, gives us their concerns. We want to make sure we address the concerns. We want to keep a dialogue going throughout this whole process, and hopefully we can get through this basically emergency situation. And then we, of course, want to be a part of a more permanent solution, because
Not as hosts.
this facility is not conducive to that. I mean, the one thing that I think of right away with regards to a cold weather warming shelter,
Cold weather emergency shelter, just so you know.
I have to say that 20 times or I'm going to put a quarter in the end and think. The one thing that I think of is shower facilities. There's nothing more humanizing than to be able to take a shower. If you've been on the streets and to be able to take a shower, well, that's just not a possibility in our facility.
It's never been also.
Well, it's never been, but to me that seems like one very humanizing thing, that people would be able to at least take a shower. That's not, and if I were working on a more permanent facility, I would be definitely lobbying for showers, because that's something that needs to be a part of that. Now, the one thing that we do well with regards to, because, we're very good Lutherans, is people will have an evening meal, so they will at least have a full stomach so they can go to sleep. Big. to me, that's what we can do. And then the second part is they will leave the facility with some food.
And coffee.
and coffee, because we are good Lutherans. And so those are the important things that we can do. But like I said, the one thing would be if there were a permanent cold weather emergency shelter, I would be advocating for showers.
Okay, so let's,
All right, so
Silly boy.
I will be asking to join the Family Flats Facebook group.
Karen?
Yes?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Can I have a question on the chat?
yes.
So does the permit allow early opening and to open and to stay at 34 degrees?
so yes, to those operational questions, we are allowed to choose to open early, and we will do so under certain circumstances, which is a combination of things. We've done that in the past. And yes, we can choose to be open when it's 34 degrees under certain circumstances, like high wind, or if it was a night where we've been open for many days when it was below 32 and there's one abnormality that's 34, and it's going to go back down. That's easier on the staffing, and it's often easier on the patrons. So there's various circumstances when we'll be doing things like that.
This is Lisa. Can I just ask an additional question?
Yes.
Is there occupational use that allows that, Karen?
Does the conditional use permit, yeah, that's why we're going for the conditional use permit.
It's the contract that allows us to do that. It's
Oh,
the
yes.
contract that's written that allows us to operate that way.
Yes, I'm sorry. It is the contract.
Unless the conditional use permit does something different.
Thanks, I understand.
Yes, and that could be a condition with the conditional use permit, yes.
Okay. Karen, can you also talk about what kind of services would be provided to folks?
What kind of services?
Yeah, in the temporary shelter, a warm, dry, caring place to spend the night, a meal, no showers, but I mean, there's other great stuff that comes along with it. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
So that's a contractual issue, so let me talk about that too.
I'm going to let Brad talk about that.
Sorry, so there, again, we are,
Can you put your mic someplace better, Brad?
well, it's right here.
Okay, go closer.
So the contract has minimums we must provide, and that really is only a place to sleep. So we've learned from doing this that it is good to provide them with a meal or they don't go to sleep. Plus, we think that's just basic, good guest services and hospitality. So we provide a simple one entree type meal, not something as broad as like the Glory Hall or another place provides, though. And then we provide them a breakfast on the way out in the morning, like oatmeal or a muffin or something like that to go out. As far as other services, we often will have clothing that we'll get from St. Vincent, or we'll have some here to give them if they need that clothing change and things like that. We don't have laundry services in this facility like we had at St. Vincent because they happen to have it there from the days when they ran the daycare that used to be here. So we won't be able to clean clothes. And then we will have
But dry
referral
socks
service.
is a big,
Yeah, clean socks, we'll try to get donations of things like that. We will refer people to services around the, out to services if people need services that they need for that. We certainly will provide, if people need testing services for COVID or other things we'll get those. The fire department will come over and help with those kind of things.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. With that,
I'm sorry, I do want to add that it is my experience that because I wear my collar when I do this work, people who are interested in prayer or some sort of religious conversation, usually it's somebody to listen in prayer, I am willing to do that. This, though, is a secular service that we would be contracted to do. So there's no religious requirement and certainly no religious agenda. But in terms of services, I'm happy to pray with people who ask for it.
And one more thing I should mention is that this entire thing tonight will be available on YouTube, so you can have people watch it. It'll be available on our YouTube channel, Juno Live, if someone wants to come back and watch it later on if they did not attend tonight.
Question, sorry.
Yes.
What is the email address to ask questions to?
Yeah, so that is manager@warmingshelter.org. And the website for the information, all the information we talked about tonight, as well as additional information that we'll add because of this, you go to warmingshelter.org. And that's where we'll keep adding information, links to things that come up, including all the information that was added that we'll add because of tonight. That's the simplest way to go. So
There is also a tab on rlcjuno.org.
Right.
That is a link to that page. So you can go through the church website, but you can go directly to warmingshelter.org.
Yes.
And the videos are all on junolive.org, which is all linked to the same website. You go to any of these, you'll get to all the information you need. Any of these things are all the same, connected to the same thing.
And if you type in Resurrection Lutheran Church, make sure you say Resurrection Lutheran Church Juno, because there are other Resurrection Lutheran churches. So,
and please, 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 if you have additional questions that come up after tonight, if somebody that you talk to after tonight has a question, as Karen has said, we really do want your questions. We want an opportunity to address and mitigate concerns. So absolutely, please, whether you're emailing manager.org or some other contact. Just as a tip, the machine at the church, we don't have a secretary right now, so that's non-optimal. But one of these other contact methods is great, and we would really like to work with you.
and with that, I do believe that we will close. Thank you, everyone, both in the sanctuary and online. I really appreciate your concern, your interest, and we hope to continue to work with all of you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, thank you.
Take you off this.
Am I good to go now?
Yeah, I think you're good to go. You can go ahead and sign off.
Good night, sweetheart.
Thank you for doing that.
I'm sorry. Good night, our very official social media person.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Thank you for coming, Bob.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, camera crew.
So, thank you, bye, everybody, and then you for everybody.
And thank you those who came in person tonight.
And it's not alongside
Camera's on? Yeah, there's nothing else tonight. Alexa,
Thanks for being
turn
here,
the
Bob.
studio lights off.
Huh? Yep. Yeah, not a first choice. Not a first choice, but